Joining us now is Naira Huck, who is the CEO of Avicenna Strategy. She's also a Sirius XM talk show host, popular television commenter, and an international public affairs consultant. Naira, thank you so much for joining us.
Great to be with you, Anna.
So I wanted to focus our conversation on some foreign policy, particularly the escalating tensions between the United States and Iran. It appears that things are certainly moving toward the direction of war, and it's certainly something I'm concerned about, but I wanted to get your thoughts. Where do you believe we are right now, and is there a way for us to prevent the Trump administration from engaging in war with Iran?
Listen, we're not in a good place when it comes to foreign policy in general, particularly in the Middle East, where Donald Trump has outsourced US foreign policy to Israel on one side and Saudi Arabia on the other. Both countries are interested in engaging Iran militarily. They have been for years, and they tried to do that in the Obama administration. But Obama turned around and said, listen, we need to be able to do diplomacy and bring people to the table to solve these problems. Iran is not a good actor in the region, but Donald Trump, with John Bolton, the architect of the Iraq War, has made it clear he is absolutely open to provoking a military option and embedding the United States in a war that it's not guaranteed to win.
So over the weekend, Trump gave an interview to Fox News, of course, and he was asked about Iran and what his plan is. And I thought his answer was interesting because it did show a little bit of a difference between the president and John Bolton, his national security advisor. Let's take a quick look.
I ended the Iran nuclear deal. And actually, I must tell you, I had no idea it was going to be as strong as it was. The country is devastated from the standpoint of the economy.
But now you see, the thing that I think a lot of people are worried about is that they heard what you said in 2016 and liked it when you said no more stupid wars. And then they hear these stories about troops and so on.
I just don't want them to have nuclear weapons. And they can't be threatening us. And with all of everything that's going on, and I'm not one that believes, I'm not somebody that wants to go into war, because war hurts economies, war kills people, most importantly, by far, most importantly. Right. You do have a group, and they call it the military-industrial complex. They never want to leave. They always want to fight. No, I don't want to fight. But you do have situations like Iran. You can't let them have nuclear weapons. You just can't let that happen.
So my interpretation is that Trump seems to be saying two different things that conflict with one another. On one hand, he's arguing
that would happen.
I mean, it's not very surprising. Trump has the habit of doing that. But on one hand, he's saying Iran can't have nuclear weapons. I mean, he's the one who decided to rip up the Iran nuclear deal. And then on the other hand, he argues, I don't want war. And he even brings up the issue of the military-industrial complex. So which one is it? I mean, if you don't want war, then you should probably remain in this nuclear deal with Iran.
So Donald Trump does not have his own ideology, and I think those of us who care about the direction of the country and not going to war can use that to our advantage, right? He is ultimately going to do what he thinks is either popular with his base or that his advisors are telling him are good for his electoral positioning. So if there is enough of an outcry from the foreign policy people, from progressives, from other leaders across the country, including corporate leaders who can see how this will affect the US economy if we are now on a third war front, I think there's an opportunity, particularly again on Fox News as they speak directly to Donald Trump, to build enough public outcry that he'll step back from doing something just because John Bolton wants him to do it.
And John Bolton has been pushing for war with Iran, and it's incredible because this is a man who was one of the architects in the preemptive war in Iraq. And he apparently hasn't learned anything from it and is pushing for yet another war, which would be far greater in size because Iran is 4 times larger than Iraq is. Their military capability is very different from the military capability that we saw in Iraq. And so it would certainly draw in far more of our resources. It would definitely threaten many more lives and destabilize the region. Now, Interestingly enough, though, you have the United States and the Trump administration arguing that, oh, Iran is a threat, is an imminent threat. They're doing X, Y, and Z, even though they're not providing any evidence of them. There was some accusation that they were blowing up oil tankers abroad, but there was no evidence given to show that Iran was really behind it. And then on the other hand, you see Iran's foreign minister give interviews to people like Chris Wallace. And I think what he says here is incredibly important because of what Trump is not only communicating to Iran, but what he's communicating to the world. Let's take a quick look at that.
Engagement is not producing results in Iran. President Trump has made sure that the people of Iran would not believe in engagement. We approached the international community in good faith. We reached an agreement with the international community, with the United States, 6 other powers. President Trump, just because he disliked President Obama, just left that agreement without having read it. And people of Iran started to feel and started to see that engagement does not have dividends. That's a very bad message, not only that you're sending to the people of Iran, but you're sending to the rest of the world, that they should not rely on the signature of a president of the United States.
So does Foreign Minister Zarif have a point there? And is this leading to irreparable damage when it comes to the United States and our reputation?
Well, it's following on a pattern that Donald Trump has already set about US reputation, right? Where everybody knows that Trump is a fickle leader and he can change his mind on a dime. And so he's not a reliable ally. When he's not a reliable ally, the United States is not a reliable ally. And you have John Bolton, who is always called for regime change. And that's code because regime change rarely happens without military intervention when the public in that country does not want it. And that's what the foreign minister is referring to. Iran is not like Iraq. It is a democracy in which people elect a leader. It is also has a very strong religious leadership that controls much of the culture of the society, but it's 81 million people strong. There's an opportunity to work with the Iranian people to undermine some of the religious bigotry and extremism and really prop them up. And yes, there's an opportunity to use economic tools like we have with sanctions to bring the leadership to the table to negotiate. That was the whole point of the Iran deal. It's not ideal. It's not working with great people. But what do you do to incentivize all the powers that be to negotiate with you? Donald Trump and John Bolton are not interested in any of these diplomatic tools. And so what you'll see is them building this drumbeat and narrative that Iran is doing and bringing forward all this intelligence, whether it's made up or not, about Iran behaving against US interests, attacking US interests. None of that is new, though. So they're going to try to present this in a way that will incite Americans who are not aware of how things are in the region and incite them to support an all-out war effort. And I think that's what we really have to be careful about, is not falling for the public narrative ploy that John Bolton is going to be playing on the American public.
Of all the things that Trump's base demands, I would argue that they are certainly right when it comes to not supporting these interventionist wars. And Trump certainly did run a platform that focused on, hey, let's get our troops back. Let's stop engaging in these costly wars. We're wasting money. And so Bolton's got a lot of work to do if he's going to persuade the American people, the majority of whom do not want war with Iran. And it's fascinating to see how Bolton is currently responding to some of the critics, including the foreign minister of Iran. On the same day that the foreign minister was interviewed by Chris Wallace, so was John Bolton. And here is his reaction to the critics. Let's take a look.
Ambassador, as you just heard, Foreign Minister Zarif says you're part of the B team, a small group of leaders, you in the US, others in the Middle East, Bibi Netanyahu, bin Salman, bin Zayed, who are working to try to steer President Trump into a conflict with Iran. Your response?
Well, he also said in another interview he wished he were working with the A-team. In the past few days, the North Koreans have also called me dim-sighted. The Cubans have said I'm a pathological liar. I'd say I've had a pretty good week.
So there's Bolton for you. Everyone's calling me an idiot because I've been a complete and utter failure when it comes to foreign policy. But to me, that's a good week. I mean, it's amazing how he's unwilling to take any responsibility for the failures of US foreign policy. And many of these issues he was behind, including invading Iraq.
He has continued to fail up, right? And we are all, I think, amazed at just how so many older white men are able to fail up in American society, and particularly in the Trump administration. And the talk about town here in DC is that John Bolton's days may be numbered. If he's getting out ahead of his skis here and really pushing openly for a war, going on Fox News and advocating for it, hoping it'll convince his own boss to do that against campaign promises that have been made, against the general American public sentiment that is weary and fatigued about supporting wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. I think John Bolton's days may be numbered. And then frankly, that leadership change when Trump does not have loyalty to John Bolton over loyalty to his own political interests, that is also, I think, something that could be to the progressive advantage when it comes to maintaining some kind of peace in the Middle East region.
I certainly hope so. Naira Huq, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate your insight and the conversation.
Thank you, Anna, anytime.